Hey, folks. Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. One more before we head into the weekend. If anything serious breaks over the weekend, we'll come to you live then as well. But it is Friday, and it is a bloody Friday for the Assad regime in Syria. Folks, the Syrian, when they're called Syrian rebels by the mainstream media, it conjures visions of maybe the American revolutionaries or someone of that ilk. Well, it's far from that. These are, make no mistake about it, Islamic jihadists with links to Al Qaeda. The main group, HTS, came out of Al Qaeda and links to the Muslim Brotherhood. So these are Sunni jihadis who want to turn Syria into a mini Islamic caliphate, an Islamic state ruled by Sharia law. Let's just get that out of the way right now. If you've been watching us over the past few days, we've been describing this to you, but they're on the march right now in a major, shocking way, in a lightning offensive. And the Assad regime, and by extension, its benefactors in Iran, are on their heels right now. And look, Russia has been a strong, strong backer of Assad. They're going to have to plot their next move as well, because as I come to you on Friday, December 6th, okay, you know about Aleppo. About a week ago, a little over a week ago, the Sunni jihadis led by HTS roared out of northwestern Syria, where I don't want to say that they lied dormant for the past 4 years or so, but they hadn't made too much noise. Well, they came roaring out of that region. They took Aleppo, the second largest city in Syria. And now they moved on yesterday and a little bit south and seized Hama, the fourth largest city in Syria. And now, as I come to you, almost 4 p.m. Central Time here in the United States, they are reportedly at the gates of Homs, which is the third largest city in Syria. So, second largest Aleppo, third largest, soon it seems, Homs, fourth largest Hama, the largest, you guessed it, Damascus. Now, can they drive all the way to Damascus, I think, is the question right now. Again, this has been a lightning jihadi offensive. And the Assad regime, its forces are on their heels. Government forces, Syrian government forces of the regime, hey, they're on their heels. Number one, there was the element of surprise, clearly. But number two, and this can't be stressed enough, Iran and Hezbollah have been the main defenders, backers, but key term, defenders of the Assad regime. Not because they love Bashar al-Assad, but because of their own interests. Their interest is to have a foothold and really a stranglehold in Syria, to use that country, which isn't really even a sovereign nation anymore, because everyone's got their hooks in there in Syria, whether it's Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, Erdogan in Turkey. Then the Kurds have carved out their position there. So it's tough to call Syria a sovereign state. Look, Assad rules over a chunk, a sizable chunk, or at least he did before last week. But I say all that to say he's a client of Iran. Let's face it. And Iran and Hezbollah are there for their own selfish, evil interests, which involve mainly using Syria as a transit point to funnel weapons and from which they can launch attacks against Israel. Why? Because Syria lies to Israel's north. The Syrian Golan butts up against the Israeli Golan. It borders Israel, obviously. And number one, if you're Iran, you want to establish that beachhead on the Syrian side of the Golan to launch missiles high ground into Israel. And number two, if you want to get weapons to Hezbollah and Lebanon, you got to go through Syria, unless you want to do it through the sea route, through the Mediterranean route, which becomes a whole lot more challenging. Syria for Iran has been too big to fail. I should say in specific, Syria's regime, the Assad regime, too big to fail. So why is it failing, you might ask? Well, it's real simple. Because Iran and Hezbollah, which were, the main defenders, the main proper-uppers, if that's a term, of the Assad regime, have been smashed over the past 2.5 months by Israel. Hezbollah, maybe at 30% capacity of its fighting force, what it was before Israel went on a major offensive starting September 17th with Operation Exploding Pager. Iran, as it has seen its ring of fire unravel. Hamas decimated in Gaza, Hezbollah taking massive, massive blows that it may never recover from, frankly. Still dangerous, but not what they were. And then Iran itself having its air defense systems taken out on October 26th in Israeli airstrikes there. So Iran's reeling. Its ring of fire strategy, which had meticulously built up over the past few decades, that's unraveling before its eyes. And now Syria, another ring on the ring of fire, is unraveling as well. Iran, look, Hezbollah just agreed to the ceasefire with Israel last week. And Israel still thumped them a few times since then because Hezbollah has breached that ceasefire. But Iran and Hezbollah haven't even been able to catch their breath. And now they've got the Sunni jihadis rampaging towards them. So they're all caught off guard. And if Hezbollah and Iran aren't there to bail Assad out, who's left? It gets a lot more difficult. Well, you might say, what about Russia? Yeah, but Russia, in case you haven't noticed, also a bit distracted in Ukraine. But is the cavalry on its way? And it may very well be, in terms of the Iran-backed Shia militias in Iraq. Do they get, I mean, they're already getting involved as we speak. Look, thousands of those Iranian-backed foot soldiers, the militias from Iraq, they're crossing into Syria. And we've described it as tongue-in-cheek, as a Lord of the Rings fan, like probably a lot of our viewers are. But I described it tongue-in-cheek, and our good friend Waleed Farah has described it like this as well. Basically, a climactic orc versus orc showdown in the heart of Syria. Meaning, hey, there's no good guys here. When you have on one side jihadi forces linked to al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood, and on the other side, Iran, Hezbollah, the Assad regime, these jihadi militias, have at it, boys. If you're Israel, you're America, you're anywhere in the free world, you're saying, okay, we're going to sit back and you guys are going to tear each other apart. But that's the situation we're heading towards right now. But what about the chemical weapons factor? And two things: Israel upping its alarm, repositioning forces as this unfolds. But Syria's chemical weapons, if this proceeds, and if the Sunni jihadis, so-called rebels, continue to advance, and what if all of a sudden they're at the gates of Damascus? No one's standing in their way. Those chemical weapons sites scattered throughout Syria. Do Islamic jihadists of the al-Qaeda ilk get their hands on chemical weapons? And then what? It doesn't make Israel sleep easy at night, I'm sure, because they're staring across the border at Israel. But how about this? What about a desperate Bashar al-Assad or a desperate Iran or these militiamen? Assad's got his hands on the chemical weapons. What if Iran, Hezbollah, et cetera, the militiamen, what if they get their hands on chemical weapons and they decide to use them? Or Assad says, you know what? It's my last stand. I'm not going down without a fight. I'm not going to end up like Gaddafi did in Libya years ago. I'm going to use chemical weapons. I'm going all in. It's the only way I can win. Folks, this is a very feasible scenario, I think. I hope it's never going to happen, obviously, but I think it's significant and worth discussing, especially because of reports that Israel may have acted against Syrian chemical weapons stockpiles. Israel's got the same concern that we're discussing right now. Hey, we're going to break it all down in a minute in more detail. This is very important what's happening right now, and a very tumultuous, dangerous period. I know everyone's in the Christmas spirit here in America and around. I am too. I'm trying to be. But in all seriousness, it's also a dangerous time. 45 days until, I've been calling him Sheriff, Donald J. Trump takes office once again, because there will be a new sheriff in town and the world is on notice. Peace through strength will return for America. And as an American, that makes me very happy, needless to say. But in that time frame, as we await for Trump to take office, January 20th, the inauguration, you got 45 days where this gathering storm of China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea can make a lot of noise. And if you saw Joe Biden earlier this week in Africa, he was at a summit with African leaders, and folks, he quite literally fell asleep at the summit. Captured on camera for the world to see. The man was fast asleep for at least a minute. during this conference, as African leaders were speaking at the table, he was at the same table with them. He wasn't just in the audience. You know, you're at a movie, it gets dim in the theater, you might nod off after a long day at work, and your kids are shaking. Hey, Dad, you're missing the best part. It wasn't that. He was, and look, I understand jet lag. I get it. But folks, he was at a table like I'm sitting at right now. It was close quarters and intimate with 3 or 4 African leaders, leaders of nations. And he fell asleep right in front of him. And as the cameras, the eyes of the world were watching. I don't say this to ridicule Joe Biden at all. I say it to sound the alarm. This is disturbing. Who's running this country right now where I'm sitting, this great country, the United States of America? It's a valid question with 45 days to go. It actually seems like Donald Trump's running things. He seems more like the commander in chief than Biden does already, even before taking office yet again. So I say all that to say, keep it all in prayer. This is, you know, I mean, when the bad guys see footage of the so-called leader of the free world, Joe Biden, asleep at the wheel, literally, they get a bit emboldened. And they say, wow, when Trump gets in office in January 20th, things are going to be a lot more difficult. He's going to hold us accountable. There will be peace through strength. But man, with this guy in office for the next 45 days, we can run roughshod. You know, they're thinking it. So something to keep an eye on. Yes, it's optimism here in America. I can tell you, we have viewers from around the world, but I can tell you here in the United States, there's optimism. There's a renewed spirit that I haven't seen in years in the wake of the repudiation of the radical left on November 5th by broad sectors of the American people, all races, ages, everything, voted against this radical left madness. And there's a feeling of optimism, like a weight's been lifted, but we got to get to the finish line January 20th in a very dangerous world. So we'll keep it on prayer, and we're going to unpack it more, the chemical weapon question in Syria. And it's a question that's being asked more and more around the world, and particularly in Jerusalem, as Israel's leaders survey the scene just to their north in Syria. We want to break that down in a minute. Before we do, hey, quick reminder, if you have not subscribed, be sure to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube. Click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted, folks. We're coming to you most days, sometimes even on the weekends, depending on the news cycle. We want to keep you informed about the world's most strategic, chaotic, prophetic region and how it affects you no matter where you live. So be sure to subscribe. That's number one. And this is current events, breaking news from an unapologetically biblical perspective. Imagine that, but that's what we do. Hey, number two, our partner for today's live stream, our dear friends at Artsa. Now, we're talking about Israel being profoundly affected by the chaos happening around it in the region, whether it's war in the north with Hezbollah, whether it's war to the south with Hamas. Who knows what's going to happen in Syria? I say all that to say the past 14 months plus, or about 14 months, tomorrow will be 14 months, since the October 7th, 2023 massacre have brought profound struggles to the people of Israel, including Israel's economy and small businesses in particular. You can't have entire sections of a nation closed down. We're talking northern Israel, the areas along the Gaza border in the south, and tourism, which is a big driver for Israel's economy as well, also shut down for 14 months and not feel the squeeze. In a tiny nation like Israel, the size of the state of New Jersey, imagine that. So many businesses in Israel have had to shutter, close down. They're struggling right now. And that's where Artsa comes in. The beautiful Artsa boxes are delivered to your doorstep from the Holy Land. It's artsabox.com, from the Holy Land, chock full of great products. The sights, the smells, the sounds, the taste of Israel, made, key point here, by Israeli small businesses and Israeli artisans. So you are fulfilling the biblical mandate to bless Israel as you help to bless the people of Israel economically in the time of their greatest need. Biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3. Artsbox.com. Use a discount code Watchman for your 10% discount off an Artsa box subscription. Right now, in time for the season, they are featuring a Christmas box. Hey, it's December 5th, 20 days, under 3 weeks until Christmas for the Israel lover in your life. Someone maybe they've never been to Israel, it's on their bucket list, or they've been and they can't get back. This is a taste of Israel delivered to your doorstep. I'm telling you, folks, high quality, awesome products made by awesome Israeli businesses. It's artsabox.com, and use the discount code Watchman for that 10% discount off your Arts a Box subscription. I can tell you, this is a unique and fun gift. You're getting the Holy Land delivered to your doorstep with these high quality, handcrafted, beautiful products. Again, made in Israel, straight from the Holy Land. Great stuff. Great, unique Christmas or Hanukkah gift. Check it out. artsabox.com. Discount code Watchman, M-A-N. Great stuff. Some not so great stuff unfolding to Israel's north, which is one of the reasons we need to support Israel's economy and Israeli businesses right now. And that will be taking place in Syria as we've been unfolding. And if you're just joining us, we've been talking about the march of these Sunni jihadis in Syria. Now, as I come to you, they've seized Aleppo, they have seized Hama, the second and fourth largest cities in Syria. Now they're at the doorstep, reportedly, of Homs, which is the third largest city in Syria. So if they seize 3 of the top 4 largest cities in Syria, we've got a big problem. Or not me, I should say Bashar al-Assad and his masters in Iran have a big problem, I should say. Because all that's left then is Damascus. And is there a highway to Damascus? Who knows what we will see? A highway for the jihadis, or do they make a highway, I should say, straight to Damascus? I think it's all on the table right now. I think the world is stunned by this lightning offensive by the jihadis. And I think Israel's stunned to a degree. So here's some info on that. And we want to talk more about that chemical weapons factor. This from the Jerusalem Post. I'm looking down straight at my phone. In an unusual step, the IDF has announced aerial and ground reinforcements deployed in the Golan Heights. This follows a situational assessment carried out on Thursday and Friday by the IDF General Staff and Northern Command. Due to the ongoing internal conflict in Syria, the IDF has announced it is reinforcing aerial and ground forces in the Golan, which border Syria. And the IDF is monitoring developments and is prepared for all scenarios and will not tolerate threats near the Israeli border. They're going to meet the Security Cabinet on Saturday and Sunday as well. So they see this, and the cabinet will deal mainly with Syria. So you could have a situation, and this isn't the first time. I've been on the Golan Heights many times along that Israel-Syria border, and you could have a situation where you have al-Qaeda, ISIS types, right on Israel's border. We had that 2017, 2018, and 2016, and then in a major way, Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, they pushed back and they largely rooted them out in places like Dara along the Israel-Syria border. But these jihadis may come back with a vengeance. And Israel, it's interesting because people are saying, some analysts are saying, look, Israel should be rooting for the rebels because it weakens Iran and Hezbollah and Assad further, and it further unravels the Iranian ring of fire. I get it, and that's true. But man, oh man, it's not like you have Jeffersonian Democrats coming across the battlefield there. These are guys who are linked to al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood, who, again, want an Islamic state in Syria. It's ISIS, part 2, what we saw with the Caliphate 2014, 2015 in Syria and Iraq. So these are not nice guys. And they're not someone you want to, quote, root for, needless to say. And it could bring a whole lot more instability to Syria, and that's saying something. It's one of the most unstable places on earth. But a big question here is who possesses the chemical weapons? And thank God, by the way, nuclear. Thank God, the world should be thanking Israel. In 2007, Israel struck Syria's nuclear reactor. Bashar al-Assad had a nuclear weapons program until Syria took it out in 2007, just as it took out Saddam Hussein's nuclear reactor in 1981, and just as it very well take out Iran's nuclear facilities sometime in the years to come. You see the precedent. Israel's not going to accept a nuclear armed adversary in the Middle East, and nor should it. But Assad has used chemical weapons in the past on his own people. We know that. It's one of the reasons President Trump struck there in 2017. Assad crossed the red line that Trump had set, and Trump kept his word. But we mentioned this at the top, and I'll mention it again. It's a real simple conversation. And here's another little nugget for you being reported in the region. An unconfirmed report that the IDF, I'm reading this straight from the Times of Israel, Channel 12 TV network in Israel reports that the IDF recently struck a Syrian chemical weapons stockpile. The network cites foreign reports, and that's vague, but Haaretz, which is a left-wing, it's kind of the New York Times of Israel, enough said. But for what it's worth, Haaretz reported earlier this week that the Israeli military fears that amid the Syrian rebel assault and their taking over of military sites belonging to the Assad regime, chemical weapons could fall into the wrong hands. If such weapons fall into the hands of the rebels or Iranian militias, Israel would have to act in a way that may affect Syria and the entire Middle East. Now, two things here. One in the natural, second in the prophetic. We're talking Isaiah 17. More on that in a minute. But number one, the scenario again. On one side, could you have the jihadis, the al-Qaeda types, get a hold of chemical weapons and use them against Assad, against Israel? Who knows? They're slightly unpredictable, to say the least. Number two, could Assad go out in a blaze of glory, in his view, and use them to try to save himself? Number three, could the Iranian-backed militias get a hold of them and use them? There's a lot of nasty scenarios here, folks, no doubt. And number two, a lot of our prophecy watchers who are watching right now are probably saying, oh, man, what does that mean for – and we're talking Damascus as – look, if Aleppo, Homs, and Hama are taken, three of the four largest cities, and all that's left is Damascus, there's all of a sudden a bullseye on Damascus. And the prophecy laid out in Isaiah 17 is Damascus, Isaiah 17, chapter 1, Damascus will become a ruinous heap. It will cease to be a city. Some strong stuff. And it's never happened. Damascus is one of the world's oldest inhabited cities, never been completely destroyed, even during the civil war, which broke out in 2011. Even the Mongols didn't completely raze Damascus to the ground, but the Bible is very clear that a day is coming when Damascus will cease to be a city, a ruinous heap. What could cause Damascus to be a, quote, ruinous heap, in the words of Isaiah, with God Almighty speaking through him? I think that's very relevant when we hear when there's civil war in Syria, when there's jihadis, bad actors all around fighting each other, chemical weapons in the picture. So I think a lot of people right now are thinking, man, okay, this is perilous and not a good time to be in Damascus or for that city in general. So we shall see, folks, because this is rapidly, these jihadis are rapidly advancing, and the story is rapidly advancing. Took Aleppo, took Hama. If they take Homs, again, do they have a clear path, will they just make a highway right to Damascus? And you would think that would be a very bloody showdown, I'm sad to say, in Damascus. You got to think, unless Assad goes into exile in Moscow or Tehran, he's got to make his last stand in Damascus, right? Now, he's from the Alawite sect in Syria. They kind of have a little pocket, an Alawite stronghold that hugs the Mediterranean coast, not far from Hama and Homs, by the way. And then there's Damascus. I mean, if he loses Damascus, it's over for him, obviously. And some people are saying it may be over for him now. But we'll see. I say that with my personal view of it. Let's see what Iran does. Let's see what these Iranian-backed militias who are flooding into the country do. Hezbollah is vowing. We covered this on yesterday's live stream. Hezbollah is vowing to contribute, but I don't know how much they have left to give, folks. They've been smashed. There's not a lot left. They're licking their wounds. There's some, but not a lot. And Iran, too, has to hedge its bets a little. How is Syria indeed too big to fail for Iran and for Russia? That's the question. If it is, then you're going to see bitter, fierce fighting and resistance. Perhaps Russia, Iran are formulating a strategy right now, a counterattack strategy. Perhaps also there's back channel talks with Erdogan of Turkey. Remember him? Who's backing these Sunni jihadis and has been for years. So it's, as this develops, we will continue to come to you. A lot of questions here, but it's pretty much the resistance so far by Assad and his regime has been a whimper. Do they have something planned, or are Hezbollah and Iran just too weak to mount any sort of significant resistance right now? We don't know yet. But if these militiamen keep flooding into Syria, we have that showdown, a lot will be revealed. Perhaps these jihadis will be stopped in their tracks. We don't know. Chemical weapon question. Wow. Can you tell that there's never a dull moment in the Middle East? The Middle East never sleeps. So if anything happens over the weekend, we will certainly come to you. If anything big happens with a breaking update. In the meantime, keep it all in prayer. I think of the Kurds in Syria, the Christians in Syria, the Christian minority there, and people who don't want any part of this jihad. Keep them in your prayers, folks, no doubt. And keep this crazy world in your prayers, for sure. It's a world that needs Jesus now more than ever, no doubt. So thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend. If anything happens, we'll come to you. But until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.